we're going to talk a little bit about crew preparation for races like straights and Swisher. Hey, can you hear me in the bar? Can you hear me in the bar? In the bar. There we go. So wait for this to happen. So we'll talk about night sailing. We're going to talk about crew preparation. We're going to talk about personal safety gear and equipment to keep you comfortable and safe out on any of these types of races. And then probably about a half hour, and then if you need to go, you can run for the doors. If you want to come up and see some of the gear, talk to Stuart and David about kind of where to get them, what they cost, and what they're best suited for, come on up. I imagine we'll be lingering around from there. So great session so far. Looking forward to the second half. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks, Ty. So we already talked about boat prep. Now we're going to talk about crew prep. And I think Stuart already mentioned this, but my favorite way of saying this is you tend to learn some new things about, even if you've known someone for years, you learn new things about them at 3 o'clock in the morning in a gale. And sometimes those new things are really encouraging. Sometimes, anyway. So, on the training front, I just want to do a little advertorial that, there's a difference between experience and training. And most of the people that do local distance races here, most of the boats, have at least a core of deeply experienced people on board. But experience is one thing, and it's probably, if you only had one thing, I'd go for the experience. But you don't have to only have one thing. It's also a good idea to have some training. And if you think about training, when you're filling out your Straits crew list that you have to file every year, whoever's filling that list out for the team should be going like, well, who has current first aid, experience? And because you really should know if someone gets hurt that there is somebody on the boat who's got first aid training. And safety at sea, it's now recommended. This course was launched at West Vancouver Yacht Club 1 year after the 2010 Straits race, where I think we all know we had a near miss. And the course has been offered 20 times in just under 3 years, over 400 people, and it usually sells out within a few days or a week of the registration opening up. The next safety at sea class that isn't sold out already is being held here at West Van Yacht Club on April the 6th and 7th. Registration for that class opens on February 17th, and it's online on the West Van website as well as BC Sailing and VicMaui. There was a question here?
That was the question.
Okay, so February 17th, it's an online registration system. I'm not saying it'll sell out instantly, but it has. The last class we sold out in 8 hours. The class before that in 3 hours. The class before that took 3 weeks. So, the online registration system makes it fair. You put it in your calendar. It's opening at 7 o'clock in the morning on February 17th. That's the general registration. It's the same tool that you use to sign up for the various races that the club hosts, right? Name, address, credit card, a few other details, and you're in. The bad news is that Stuart and I are 2 of the 5 instructors, so.
The group.
Okay, over to you.
So roles and responsibilities. We have muster charts which we teach safety at sea, and this designates people jobs in emergencies. And this is, besides having your equipment location chart, this is one of the homeworks that you should do on your boat. And it goes along with picking your crew. So you should be picking a crew with various strengths, but they should also have various experiences. So you have a first aid person, you have someone that's got some rigging experience, you have someone that's done lots of night sailing, because obviously that's going to be important. So it's not only if they're a friend, and that's one of the things.
Or a good sailor.
Or a good sailor. If you want to read a book, read Fastnet Force 10, and it talks all about people that get into tremendous troubles if they phone up their friends the night before the race and say, there's a race, let's go in it. And unfortunately that race didn't turn out well for a number of boats and a number of people, but a great amount of it, of what you're going to rely on if weather becomes bad, is who you pick as your crew. So give it some thought. It's not just because he's your brother or he's your best friend. You need to kind of dig a little deeper sometimes. So it's really important. And preparation, always.
Okay, personal responsibility. This applies to everybody on the boat. So I think we all know that the skipper is responsible at an overall level for the safety of a boat and a crew. But I really believe that doesn't let the individual crew members off of the hook at all. I mean, if you get on a boat, you know, you're not press ganged onto that boat, you're not conscripted by the Navy, you're getting on the boat voluntarily, and when you do that, you're signing up to be a crew member on that boat and be part of the safety framework on that boat. And the first thing you need to do is you got to look after yourself. So, you know, if you're doing a 2-hour round the boys race in English Bay and you get cold and wet and you didn't bring any food and you're dehydrated, it doesn't actually matter much. Because in only 2 hours it'll be over and you'll be going back to the dock, and the club has great chili. Okay, but if you go on a straights race and you're out late Thursday night, somewhere else obviously, not here, partying, and you get to Southern Straits on Friday morning and, well, Peter's bringing the food, right? No. Lynn's bringing it. No, David's bringing it. Oh, so we don't have our food. I mean, if you don't have yourself, if you're not looking after yourself, you're going to be a liability to the rest of the crew. So you got to be rested, fed, watered, dry, warm, and you got to keep yourself that way for the duration of the race. Because as soon as you cut corners on that, you go from being an asset to the rest of the crew to just being a liability. So I think everybody's got to understand you got a personal responsibility when you go on the boat. It's not just the skipper who's supposed to make everybody happy and warm and safe. We each got to do that. Okay, we're going to switch tracks here to some personal gear show and tell. And so Stuart's going to start off with an inflatable PFD. How many people here don't use inflatables when they do a distance race? There's probably a few, one or two, couple inherently buoyant. Okay, most people are using inflatables. While Stuart's getting organized here, how many people took their inflatable? It's, what is it right now, January? How many people since September 1st have taken their inflatable and opened it up and looked at it and gone through the maintenance checklist? Okay, 1/5, 1/6 of the room. Okay, so Stuart's going to show you how hard it is to check it out.
Super simple. I opened up the zipper. On a Mustang, it might be just Velcro. I check that my cylinder is tight. I check my trigger mechanism is tight.
We're looking for green.
Active. And then I can do it right back up again.
What about the battery pack? Is there a battery pack in there?
So there's a personal light in some of the PFDs, and if you have a personal light in the PFD, you should try and test fire it to make sure it's in serviceable condition. Some of them have user replaceable batteries, and personally I always replace those before a big race. If it's a lithium long life battery that you can't use or replace, you need to use a test function, and you need to have in the back of your mind that battery might be designed to give 8 hours of service life once it's on. But if it's been in your life jacket soaking wet and firing away in the locker on the boat, it might not have any hours of battery life yet left. So,
and if you're a safety at sea instructor, you've watched the very minimalist lights that come with it, and you pack your own extra light. Very important.
So every inflatable PFD has a user's manual, a little pamphlet. Most of us got rid of that when we snipped it off when we bought the PFD, but the good news is, because it's safety equipment, every manufacturer of an inflatable PFD, without exception, has a website, and they have PDF files with the owner's maintenance manual for the model of PFD you have. So you can Google that, find it, download the little PDF file, and now you've got the manual for your inflatable. Yeah.
Cool thing I found, you can register the life jackets online, and they will send you emails to tell you, remind you when to do your checks and your life jackets.
Right, so
and
just,
how to do them. So.
yeah, just in case anyone didn't hear that, a number of the manufacturers, like Spinlock as an example, have a register your product feature, and if you register your Spinlock jacket, they send you emails reminding you of the maintenance schedule. So you get a notification reminding you. I think Spinlock's on a once every 6 month cycle, so that's pretty easy to do and helps with the maintenance reminders.
So the other thing is, if you're going to get into a life raft, or you're going to get into the sea, if you're going to get out of a boat into a life raft, this is something that you have to change how you think. So these are automatic inflation. So they're automatic inflation. So we automatically think, all right, let's just jump in. But you know what? If you're jumping in the water and you're going to rely on it to inflate, you're not in control anymore. So believe it or not, if you're on your boat and you have to enter the water, you need to inflate it on land first, which is a manual pull. The inflation for in the water is for emergencies. If you're going to get into a life raft, don't inflate it first, because it's then you're then going to have to deflate it. Inflate it when you need it. Okay? So if you pull it, it's got a manual pull. We hope. See? There it is. Spin lock. It has a hood on the back. You can pull over. Very important. It's got big here, big huge air vent.
So the spray hood that Stuart just pulled over, if you're in high winds, high seas, spray being blown, if you pull the spray hood over, it gives you a nice little personal sauna.
The thing that they found is that you float, obviously, with this riding up, and you can imagine the water level is here. The reason you have a hood is because it's a natural entrance into your airway and your face. Every wave and every piece of water comes right up into your face without the hood on. So with the hood, it protects you from the wind, the waves, and everything else. The other thing that's super important, that if you're going to test this unit at home, is it's got a breather tube, just like everyone that we've seen on the crazy airplane shows, and you can deflate it really easy. So if you're going to test it at home, you should never, okay, if you're going to test it at home, never pull, because now I'm going to have to do a recharge on it. And it's also very hard on, you can imagine, the PFD and a life raft. Every time you inflate it, the seams and everything take quite a beating. So what you want to do if you're going to test your equipment at home is use the manual inflation tube and just blow it up by mouth. Just like I can deflate it quite easily here. And it has a trigger on it that you allow, there, easily deflates it. And this is one of the things that we teach at Safety at Sea, is that if you're getting into a life raft or you're doing any kind of work with your PFD on, it's really important to deflate it a little bit, because then you can move. The other thing, if you are getting into a life raft, you virtually can't get into it with this inflated, because you're miles away from where you are. This big thing's in front of you. So by deflating a bit, it allows you to move around and have access. So this manual inflation, we've all seen it on every airplane when they test it. Use this to inflate it at home, and then also use this to deflate it as soon as you have to do anything if you do have it inflated on you. And you can see I've got a little strobe light at the back, but I have my big strobe light because it's just 100 times better to have something this big. The strobe lights that come with all these are usually very, very small. The new Spinlock ones, they actually have a piece that sticks up above your head, which then gives way better visibility. So don't be afraid of this. We have a terminology in the Safety at Sea class. Know it, use it. So once you know your piece of equipment, you tend to use it a lot more and feel a lot more comfortable. So now the only thing I'm going to have to do with this is deflate it. I'm going to have to undo the CO2 cylinder, I'm going to have to get a new trigger mechanism, and the trigger mechanism on this one is compressed paper, and I'll screw that in and then recharge it, knowing that I have a green band showing, so that if I want to look at it again, I know that I've got a good one.
That's on the little pill itself. Where's the green band?
The green band ended up on the floor because it breaks off when you inflate the device.
It's on part of the trigger
But it
mechanism.
starts out on the trigger mechanism next to the cylinder.
It's red now.
Okay, Daryl?
Could you talk a bit about blowing the thing up and doing the load test overnight?
Yeah, I'll show a picture of that in just a second, so it'll be easy to show that.
Thank you.
You want that? Okay, so that's a quick look at any quick questions on the PFD. Okay, I'm going to go a little further along here because there's some more pieces to this, and then maybe we'll come back for more questions. So, PFDs, they're either inherently buoyant, which means they're made of foam or some other thing that doesn't require inflation, or